Marcus was a ghost of a man. When the Orc warriors dragged him into the cage, betrayed by his commander, sold for 300 gold, and burdened with the agonizing guilt of accidentally killing his own father in a siege, he had completely surrendered to the void. But in the heart of the Orc territory, survival isn't handed out. It's forged. Queen Shakara's reign is bleeding out. After a disastrous raid orchestrated by her treacherous sister, left 17 of her warriors captured, Shakara is one council vote away from losing her crown and her life. Desperate for a miracle, she finds one in the silent human prisoner who instinctively starts fixing broken anvils and designing highly efficient siege engines from scrap metal. Marcus isn't just a soldier, he is a master engineer. Recognizing the shared understanding of betrayal, Shakara gambles her entire throne on his brilliance. Together, they orchestrate a bloodless siege that will either solidify her absolute power or condemn them both to a brutal execution. This is a thrilling saga of politics, engineering, and defiance. It is the story of a broken human who stopped running, and a fierce Orc queen who claimed him in front of the world, proving that true strength lies not in tradition, but in choosing exactly who stands.
They didn't announce the sentence out loud. There was no public trial, no final words, just a silent decision, and irreversible. He was betrayed by the very men who once swore to fight beside him. That morning, he was escorted to the kingdom's edge. No weapons, no explanations. When he crossed the last stone marker, he knew exactly what it meant. The Orc lands, a place no human returned from. They left him there, alone, like someone who no longer mattered. He could have run, could have tried to go back, but he didn't. He stood still, watching the horizon, waiting. The encounter didn't take long. First, silence, then heavy footsteps on the ground, and then figures emerging from the shadows. Orcs, many, armed, surrounding. He didn't resist, didn't try to negotiate. He knew that in that territory there was no room for human words, but something didn't happen. They didn't attack. They just waited. And then she appeared, the leader, taller, stronger, her gaze different from all the others. There was no rush in her movements, no anger, just attention. She approached slowly, stopped before him, observed his hands, his clothes, his face, and then his eyes. He didn't look away, and that was exactly what changed everything. Now tell me something. Would you have stayed standing like that, staring death in the eye without begging? Or would you have run like most people would? Write it down in the comments, because this choice defines everything that comes next. His name was Kale, though names meant little now. Once, that name carried weight in the Royal Army. Elite Guard, 3rd Battalion Commander, a man others followed not because they had to, but because they wanted to. He wasn't born into privilege, no noble blood, no family estates, just a farmer's son who understood discipline better than most lords understood strategy. He rose through merit alone. Every scar on his body told a story of battles won, comrades saved, honor maintained, until the day honor became inconvenient. It started with orders that made no sense. A village marked for burning, women and children included. The official reason was suspected collaboration with enemy forces. The real reason was land. Rich land, land the king's cousin wanted. Kyle refused. Not loudly, not dramatically. He simply didn't light the torch. His second-in-command did it instead, and reported the refusal. 3 days later, Kale was summoned, not to the throne room, to the northern gate. 2 guards he'd trained himself stood waiting. They wouldn't meet his eyes. "The king has decided," one said quietly, "that your service is complete. No trial, no defense, just an escort to the border." When they reached the final marker, an ancient stone carved with warnings in 3 languages, they stopped. "We're sorry," the younger guard whispered. Kyle nodded. "I know." They left him there, and he watched them go until they disappeared into the tree line. Then he turned toward the Orc lands. The ground changed first, harder, darker. The vegetation grew sparse and twisted. The air smelled different, smoke and metal and something else, something wild. He walked for an hour before stopping. There was no point in going further. If they wanted him, they'd find him. Running would only make it worse. So he sat, back against a dead tree, hands visible, empty, and waited. The sun moved across the sky. Shadows lengthened. He didn't move. Then he heard it. Not footsteps exactly, more like the earth itself shifting. A rhythm, coordinated, practiced. They emerged from 3 directions at once. 7 of them. No, 9. 2 more behind the ridge. Orcs. Not like the stories. Not mindless beasts. These moved with purpose. Military precision. They carried weapons that weren't crude. They were maintained. Sharpened. Ready. They formed a loose circle around him. Far enough to react if he moved. Close enough that he couldn't escape. Kyle remained seated. Hands still visible. Still empty. One of them growled something in their language. A question, probably. He didn't answer. There was no answer that would help. Another stepped closer. Larger. Scars across his face and arms. He raised his weapon. A massive axe that could split Kyle in half. But he didn't swing. He waited. They all waited. And then the circle parted. She walked through like she owned the very air around her. And perhaps she did. Taller than the others. Not by much, but enough. Her armor wasn't decorative. It was functional. Battle-worn. Real. Her skin bore the gray-green tone of her kind, but her eyes were different. Amber, sharp, intelligent. She stopped 3 paces away. Studied him the way a general studies a map before battle. Kale met her gaze. Not in challenge, not in submission, just met it. She tilted her head slightly, said something in Orcish, a command. The others lowered their weapons, slightly. She crouched down. Now they were eye level. Her gaze moved over him. Not quickly. She was reading him. His posture, his breathing, the lack of fear in his expression. She reached out, slowly, touched the fabric of his uniform, the royal insignia still visible despite the dirt and wear. She said something, a question this time. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. "Why are you here?" He gestured back toward the kingdom, then to himself, made a cutting motion across his throat. She understood. Her expression didn't change, but something flickered in those amber eyes. Recognition, maybe, or something darker. She stood, spoke a single word. The others moved immediately. 2 grabbed his arms, not roughly, but firmly. They lifted him to his feet. She walked away. They followed, pulling him along. Kyle didn't resist. There was no point. Whatever came next, resistance wouldn't change it. They walked for 3 hours, through terrain that would kill an unprepared traveler, across ravines, through passages between rocks that seemed deliberately hidden. The settlement appeared suddenly, built into the side of a mountain. Not primitive, not crude, structured, organized, defensible. Buildings made of stone and dark wood, smoke rising from forges, the sound of metal on metal. Training yards where younger orcs practiced combat forms that looked familiar, military, disciplined. They took him to a structure near the center, larger than the others, a great hall of sorts. Inside, the temperature dropped. Torches lined the walls. A long table dominated the center. Maps spread across its surface. Battle plans. She dismissed the others with a gesture. They left without question. Now it was just the 2 of them. She walked to the table, studied the maps for a long moment, then spoke, in the common tongue, heavily accented but clear. "You are soldier." Not a question, a statement. Kale nodded. "Good soldier. I see this." She pointed to his posture, his hands, the way he stood even now. "But your king," she made the same cutting gesture he'd made earlier, "sends you here, to die." Another nod. She turned to face him fully. "Why?" "I refused an order." "What order?" "To burn a village. Women, children, silence." She stared at him, processing, evaluating. "And this, your king punishes?" "Yes." "In my land," she said slowly, "soldier who kills women and children is punished. Soldier who refuses is honored." Kyle said nothing. What was there to say? She walked closer. "You expect death?" "Yes." "You fear?" "No." "Why?" "Because I made my choice. I knew the cost." She stopped inches away, searching his face for lies. She found none. "What is name?" "Kyle." "Kyle." She tested the word, then placed a hand over her own chest. "Thara." A name. She'd given him her name. That meant something. "You will not die today, Kyle." She turned back to the maps. "But you will work. You will earn food, earn shelter, earn life." "What work?" She pointed to his hands again. "You know weapons. You know strategy. I see this." "You want me to train your soldiers?" "No." She looked at him with something almost like amusement. "I want you to teach them what makes human soldiers stop following orders. Because human army is predictable. But human soldier who thinks..." She tapped her temple. "This is dangerous." Kyle understood then. She wasn't keeping him alive out of mercy. She was keeping him alive because she was smart, and because she saw something in him that her own people had lost in their constant warfare. The ability to say no. The first weeks were brutal. Not because they were cruel. They weren't. But because survival among orcs required adaptation. They gave him a space, a small room carved into the mountain, cold at night, no comforts, but private. They gave him food, not much, but enough. Bread that tasted like ash, meat that was probably better not to identify, water from a deep well that tasted of minerals. They gave him tasks, repair weapons, sharpen blades, mend armor. He worked in silence, learned by watching. The orcs didn't waste words. When they wanted something, they pointed. When something was wrong, they showed him. He learned their rhythms. They woke before dawn, trained until midday, worked until dusk, ate together in the great hall. He ate alone, at first. Thara watched him, not constantly, but regularly. She'd appear at the forge while he worked, stand silently, observe, then leave without comment. He noticed things about her too. She carried weight others didn't see. When she thought no one was watching, her shoulders would drop slightly, her jaw would tighten. She'd stare at something in the distance. The weight of leadership. He recognized it. He'd carried it himself. One evening, 3 weeks in, she approached him directly. "Come." He followed her up a winding path, higher into the mountain, to a plateau that overlooked the entire settlement. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of red and orange. She stood at the edge, silent. He stood beside her, equally silent. Finally, she spoke. 2 months ago, my father died. Battle wound, infected. Kyle listened. He was leader, strong, respected. When he died, clan split. Half followed me, half followed my uncle. Civil war. Yes. She nodded slowly. 3 weeks of fighting. Brother against brother. I won. But victory. She paused. Victory feels like losing. It always does, Kyle said quietly. She looked at him. You know this. Yes. Because you also chose difficult thing. You also lost people. It wasn't a question. She already knew. They stood in silence as the sun disappeared below the horizon. In your kingdom, she said eventually, leader who shows weakness dies. Yes? Yes. Here too. She turned to face him. My people respect strength, respect victory, but they do not respect. She struggled for the word. Doubt. But you doubt. Every day. Her eyes met his. And I cannot show this. Cannot ask. Cannot. She stopped. Looked away. Kyle understood then. She was alone. Completely alone. Surrounded by people, but isolated by power. Just like he'd been. You don't have to be certain, he said. You just have to be honest. Honest gets you killed. Sometimes. But dishonest gets everyone killed eventually. She considered this. You speak from experience. My king lied. About the village. About the reasons. His soldiers followed because they believed. When truth came, he gestured vaguely. Everything collapsed. Thara nodded slowly. Truth is weapon. The only one that doesn't break. She was silent for a long time. Then, you will eat in Great Hall, with others, starting tomorrow. It was an order, but also an invitation. Thank you. Do not thank. You earned this. But they both knew it was more than that. The dynamics shifted after that night, subtle at first. The orcs still didn't speak to him much, but they stopped glaring, started nodding when he passed. One of them even corrected his grip on a hammer without hostility. Small things, but meaningful. In the great hall, a space opened at one of the long tables. No one said anything, just shifted slightly to make room. He sat, ate, listened to conversations he didn't fully understand. Thara sat at the head table. She didn't acknowledge him directly, but he caught her glance once. A brief moment. Then she returned to discussing something with her advisors. Days turned into weeks. He learned more of their language, enough to understand orders, enough to ask basic questions. He learned their combat style, brutal efficiency, no wasted movement. Every strike meant to end the fight. He learned their code. Loyalty wasn't given lightly, but once given, it was absolute. And he learned about Thara. She trained harder than anyone. Every morning before the others woke, she was in the yard, practicing forms, testing new techniques, pushing herself past exhaustion. He started joining her, not with her, just nearby, working on his own conditioning, running, strength work, keeping sharp. She noticed, didn't comment, but adjusted her routine to match his timing. They never trained together, but they trained parallel. Until one morning she stopped mid-form, turned to him. Show me. Show you what? Human technique. How you fight. He hesitated. My techniques won't work for... Show me. He moved through a basic defensive sequence. Guard, parry, counter, reset. She watched intently, then mimicked it. Perfectly. Again, slower. He did. She followed. This assumes opponent is same size, she noted. What if bigger? You don't meet strength with strength. You redirect. He demonstrated, using her momentum against her in a simple deflection. She smiled. Actually smiled. Clever. Necessary. I was always the smaller one. And now you teach orc leader. The smile widened slightly. World is strange. Very strange. It became routine. Morning training. Shared techniques. Her teaching him orc combat philosophy. Him teaching her human tactical thinking. They spoke more. Not about nothing. About strategy. About leadership. About the weight of decisions that cost lives. She told him about her father. A warrior who never showed affection but taught through action. Who died believing she wasn't ready. He told her about his men. Soldiers he'd led into battle. Some who came back. Some who didn't. The guilt that never faded. They understood each other in ways that needed no translation. 3 months in, everything changed. Scouts returned with urgent news. A human military force was moving toward the border. Not raiders. A full battalion. The great hall filled with tension. Arguments erupted. Some wanted to attack first. Others wanted to fortify and wait. Thara listened to all of them, then looked at Kyle. You know human military. What is this? All eyes turned to him. He approached the map, studied the reported positions. This isn't an invasion force, he said carefully. Wrong composition. Too much cavalry, not enough supply lines. Then what? Punitive expedition, fast strike. They're after something specific. Thara's expression darkened. Or someone. The room went silent. You, one of her advisors growled. pointing at Kale. They come for you. Maybe. Then we give you to them, another said. End this. No. Thara's voice cut through the noise like a blade. We do not surrender our people. He is not our people. She stood, slowly, deliberately. He eats at our table, works in our forge, trains in our yard. He is one of us. He is human, and I am leader. Her eyes swept the room. Does anyone wish to challenge this? Silence. She looked at Kale. Can they be stopped? Depends on their goal. If they're here to retrieve me, negotiation might work. And if not, then yes, but it will cost. She nodded. Prepare defenses. I will send envoy. The advisor who'd spoken earlier stepped forward. And if envoy is killed, then we fight. Preparations began immediately. Fortifications reinforced. Weapons distributed. Scouts positioned along every approach. Kale worked alongside them, not giving orders, but offering suggestions. Better sightlines here. Choke points there. Thara noticed. You help us prepare to fight your own people. They stopped being my people when they left me to die. Still, this is betrayal in their eyes. I've already been branded traitor. Might as well earn it. She studied him for a long moment. You do not have to fight. You can hide. We will protect you. I know, but I'm not hiding. Why? Because you stood up for me in there, when you didn't have to, when it would have been easier to hand me over. This is what leader does. No, this is what a good leader does. There's a difference. Something passed between them then, unspoken, but understood. The envoy returned 2 days later, barely alive. They'd cut out his tongue. The message was clear. Thara assembled her war council. They want battle. We give them battle. But Kyle shook his head. They want me. Let me go talk to them. They will kill you. Maybe. But if there's a chance to stop this without bloodshed, you think your life is worth less than ours? I think my life is what started this. Let me be what ends it. She stared at him, anger flashing in those amber eyes. No. Thara, no. She stepped closer. You think I keep you alive this long to throw away your life now? You think I... She stopped, caught herself. No. We fight together. Or not at all. He realized then, what he'd been too blind to see. This wasn't about strategy anymore. Together then, he said quietly. She nodded. Once. Sharp. Together. The battle came at dawn. The human forces approached in formation. Professional. Disciplined. Led by a captain Kale recognized. Marcus, his former second in command. The man who'd lit the torch. Thara stood at the front of her warriors, Kale beside her. Marcus rode forward, alone, stopped within speaking distance. Kale. His voice carried across the space. You're alive. Surprised? Honestly? Yes. I expected them to kill you immediately. They're not what you think. They're orcs. Marcus said it like an obvious fact. But that's not why I'm here. The king offers amnesty. Return, full reinstatement, all crimes forgiven. Kyle felt Thara tense beside him. In exchange for what? Information. Their numbers. Their defenses. Their leaders' weaknesses. So I betray them the way you betrayed me. Marcus's expression hardened. I followed orders. You refused. That's the difference. No. The difference is I can still sleep at night. Last chance, Kale. Come back. Or we take you back. Kale looked at Thara. She met his gaze. Didn't say anything. Didn't have to. He turned back to Marcus. I'm already home. Marcus nodded slowly. Then you die with them. He wheeled his horse around, rode back to his lines. Thara raised her weapon. Her warriors responded with a roar that shook the ground. The human forces charged. The battle was brutal, close, personal. Kale fought beside orcs against humans, against men he'd trained, against a kingdom he'd once served. Every strike felt like cutting away pieces of his old life. But every time he looked at Thara, fighting with the fury of someone protecting her people, he knew he'd made the right choice. The humans were skilled, But the Orcs were defending their home, and Kale knew human tactics, knew their formations, knew their weaknesses. He called out warnings in Orcish, pointed out flanking maneuvers, helped coordinate counters. The tide turned, not quickly, but steadily. Marcus saw it, saw Kale directing the defense, saw the betrayal complete. He pushed through the lines, heading straight for Kale. They met in the center of chaos. "You've become everything you swore to fight," Marcus snarled. "No, I've become what I always was. Someone who protects the innocent." "They're not innocent. They're people. Just people. Trying to survive." Marcus attacked. Fast. Aggressive. Kyle defended, countered. They'd trained together for years, knew each other's moves, but Kale had learned new ones. He used Thara's techniques. Orc efficiency. No wasted movement. Marcus overextended. Kale struck. Not to kill, to disarm. Marcus's sword went flying. Kale's blade pressed against his throat. Yield. Never. Then die for a king who sends men to burn villages. Marcus's eyes widened. You told them?" "I told them everything." Around them the battle was ending. The humans retreating, pulling back. Thara appeared beside Kale, blood on her armor. Not all of it hers. "Kill him," she said. "No. He came to kill you. And he failed. Let him go. Let him tell the king what he saw here." "What did he see?" Kyle looked at her. "That we're not enemies. We're just people defending our home." Thara held his gaze, then nodded. "Release him." Kyle stepped back. Marcus scrambled to his feet. "Tell the king," Kyle said. "Tell him the Orcs have honor. Tell him they have mercy. Tell him they have something his kingdom lost." "What's that?" "Humanity." Marcus ran, joined the retreat. The Orcs roared victory, but Kale didn't celebrate. He just stood there, covered in blood, watching his old life disappear over the horizon. Thara touched his shoulder. "You are certain?" "About what?" "This choice. This life. Us." He turned to her. "More certain than I've ever been about anything." She smiled. Small. Real. "Good. Because you are terrible at Orcish. Need much more teaching." He laughed. Actually laughed. And in that moment, covered in blood, surrounded by warriors who'd once been strangers, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. The weeks after the battle were transformation, not just for Kale, but for the entire settlement. Word spread. A human who chose Orcs over his own kind, who fought beside them, bled beside them. Other clans sent envoys, curious, suspicious, but interested. Thara used it. Used him. "Peace is possible," she told them. "If humans like him exist, others might too." Not everyone believed. Some called it weakness, others called it strategy. But slowly, carefully, alliances formed. Kale became a symbol, not a hero, just proof that the old hatreds weren't inevitable. He didn't love the attention, but he understood its necessity. And through it all, Thara was there. They never spoke about what was between them. No declarations, no promises, just proximity, just trust, just the quiet understanding that they'd chosen each other. One night, 6 months after the battle, she found him on the plateau, their plateau now, sat beside him in familiar silence. "My council wants me to marry," she said eventually. His chest tightened. "To who?" "Clan leader from the south. Powerful. Good alliance. Makes sense strategically." "Yes." Silence. "Will you?" he asked. "Do you want me to?" He looked at her. Really looked at her. "No." "Why?" "Because..." He struggled for words. "Because you deserve someone who sees you. Not just your power, not just your position. Someone who sees you struggling and thinks you're stronger for it. Someone who knows what you carry and carries it with you anyway." She was quiet for a long time. Then, "Like you." "Yes, like me." She took his hand, rough, scarred, strong. "In my culture, we do not have long speeches, do not have elaborate ceremonies. We have simple question." "What question?" "Will you stand with me? Through battles, through peace, through everything that comes." His throat tightened. Yes, even though I am orc and you are human. Especially because of that. Because we're proof that none of this has to be the way it's always been. She leaned her head against his shoulder. Your kingdom will hate you forever. I know. My people will always see you as outsider. I know. And still you choose this? Every day, every moment, every breath. She lifted her head, kissed him. Simple, real, no performance. When she pulled back, she was smiling. Then we are bound, you and me, until death comes. Until death comes. They sat together as stars emerged above them. Two people who shouldn't exist, shouldn't work, shouldn't survive, but did anyway. Years passed. The settlement grew, became a city, a neutral zone where humans and orcs could meet, trade, talk. Not everyone accepted it. There were attacks, assassination attempts, political pressure. But Kyle and Thara stood firm. She led with strength. He led with wisdom. Together, they built something new. They had a child, a daughter, neither fully human nor fully orc, but somehow both. She became symbol of a future people were still learning to imagine. On quiet nights, when the city slept and their daughter was safe in bed, they'd return to the plateau. Do you regret it? Thara would ask sometimes. Same question. Different years, and Kale's answer was always the same. Not once, not ever. Because he'd been sent to die among monsters. Instead, he found humanity where he least expected it. Not in the kingdom that birthed him, but in the woman who saw something in him that no one else had seen. Not weakness, not potential, not usefulness, just worth. And sometimes that's all anyone needs. To be seen, to be valued, to be chosen. He was betrayed by his kingdom, left to die among enemies. But the enemy became family, the exile became home, and the man they discarded became the bridge between two worlds. Not because he was special, but because when everyone else looked away, one person looked closer and saw something worth saving. So here's my question for you. If you were thrown away by everyone you ever trusted, would you have the strength to build something new? Or would you just give up? Because that's what this story is really about. Not revenge, not even survival. It's about finding worth in yourself when the whole world says you're worthless. And if that resonates with you, if stories like this make you feel something real, then subscribe. Because I'm here every week bringing you narratives that don't just entertain. They make you think. They make you feel. They remind you why stories matter. Hit that subscribe button. You won't regret it. This is the kind of story that stays with you. Not because it's loud or dramatic, but because it's true in ways that matter. We've all been discarded by someone, and we've all had to choose whether to let that define us or redefine ourselves.